All right, welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com, twincitiesgeek.com, and filminquiry.com. So we're now into April, and I thought it would be a good time to catch up on some new movies. It's been a while. I've been busy I was recently at Anime Detour, so I was doing a ton of panels since then. So I didn't have time to get around to a lot of the films I wanted to cover, but there are quite a few that I want to cover here. I want to cover one that came out last weekend, that being Dev Patel's Monkey Man. I also wanted to cover a small film that's kind of rising from the ranks that I think is worth talking about, which is Hundreds of Beavers. I also wanted to talk about the new Ghostbusters film, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, as well as, if we have time, I'll think about it. I'll briefly talk about Kung Fu Panda 4. So basically a whole bunch of films I've been caught up on from March, basically. Even though Monkey Man is technically April, and Hundreds of Beavers it's expanding. It's gone to a few theaters around the country, and it will actually be available on digital next Tuesday, I believe. So a little bit of an advertisement for a smaller film there. Did you catch up on a lot as well from Scorn? Yeah. It's tough, and it's it's one of those things where it's just like, it always like snowballs on you. And I mean, like, between like spring break and doing the Anime Detour convention, I get lost in a bunch of films around this time, which is odd because like I actually keep up with a lot more towards awards time during the FYC time or era, whatever. The most wonderful time of the year where we get all those wonderful press kits. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into it. And let's talk about the latest film that everyone's talking about from this week, Monkey Man. All right. And okay, let me get my notes up here. And we will talk about this new action film in 3, 2, 1. So, Dev Patel's Monkey Man is the directorial debut for Patel, who additionally stars in this action film, and it's one of those action films that it feels like it's trying to be more of its own thing. And I think what makes a film like Monkey Man work is the fact that it has that it has like the guts to go forward with the type of film that Patel wanted to make. And it feels like it could have easily just been like a kind of, just like another one of like the John Wick knockoffs. But in fact, even within like the context of the film, they actually do reference like John Wick as like, like a famous movie that a lot of people have seen, which feels like a little bit of a gamble because then, of course, everyone's going to be comparing to John Wick because, the John Wick films are basically like an action ballet, and it's like they're astounding choreography there. But Monkey Man actually manages to be a little bit more of its own thing, and I think what makes the film work so much better, at least to like the screenplay, is that unlike John Wick, it actually takes place within a specific setting. It's not set in like kind of like a generic kind of like world of like power and violence. Like, it's set in India, and it specifically targets like the politics of the region, while still commenting on like a story about like rebellion and just going forth with that, which Patel actually does pretty well here. So Dev Patel plays a nameless figure who goes by a few names. He's like, I think one of the names they gave to him is Kid because like we see a lot of footage from him when he was much younger with his mother living in a village. Most people in the underground wrestling ring know him as Monkey Man, which is an obvious moniker because he wears a monkey mask when he does battles in these more or less staged fights so that he can like take a dive and make some money along the way. And other people know him as Bobby, which is a name he just chooses, which they reveal that he just chose that name because it's a brand of bleach that he uses on the job. So Kid, or Monkey Man, however you want to refer to him as, he basically wants to get revenge on Rana, played by Sikandar Kur, who was responsible for the death of his mother. And we kind of get like some inklings of that early on, but then, there's more and more flashbacks are progressively revealed. Like, yes, this guy was responsible for the death of Monkey Man's mother. So he wants revenge, so he basically works his way up through this ritzy organization of corrupt officials and, gangsters and, bad cops who have all just kind of like taken in like the darker side of like the crime life. And he works his way up within the system in order to get closer and closer to kill Rana. So it's mostly a revenge thriller, that's like the bare bones of the script. Like, obviously there's a little bit more to it, and of course, like, with any great film, it's all about it's not about what it is about, but how it goes about it. That old saying, which is like, how do you make this revenge thriller exciting? And Patel's performance, like it's a gritty performance. Like, I think I have this feeling that because, like, Dev Patel put so much work into this performance and trying to seem like, very very tough and strong, he wants you to see everything that he put into it. He wants you to see every muscle clench and every like pulsating bicep, every punch that's landed, every kick that's thrown, every knife that's jammed into the into like chests and faces and stuff like that. So the way that like Patel kind of directs this film is that he wants the camera to get up close. He wants to get up right up into like his face to show you all the blood, sweat, and tears that go into like this fight choreography. And it's a little bit of a gamble because most films that try to do kind of have that handheld technique where they get in really close and they shift the camera around really quickly, and like they almost have like kind of like a POV of like one of the henchmen getting into this fight. It has that issue where it could just turn out like a blur. If it's not like properly handled or staged correctly, that it could just be like, almost kind of like a Michael Bay effect where it's just like forcing the camera all around. You can't keep track of where everything is. But thankfully, most of the camera work actually works pretty well. It does focus on the areas where I think Patel wanted to showcase where the violence was most brutal, the aspects that you want to focus on the most, and it keeps everything relatively in frame where for the most part, it doesn't feel like you're getting lost within the carnage. There are a few moments where it blurs here and there, where you're kind of, where the camera's a little bit too handheld, like it's rocking back and forth just a little bit, where you can't quite tell what's going on, but every now and then it does like kind of even out to kind of like reveal more of like the intensity that happens with these fights. And the fights are actually pretty cleverly staged. I mean, you have scenes where Dev Patel's like I think one of like the best stage scenes is the kitchen sequence, and I think that's just it's one of the best like consistently framed scenes for how well the camera holds on that scene where Monkey Man comes into this organization, throws pots and pans at people, like smashes bottles over their faces, takes someone's head and force it down onto a grill, and you get like the nice zoom in right on that. It's immaculately shot for that. There are other sequences though where it's not all like close-ups and extreme close-ups, and I think one of the best sequences for that is like there's a lounge fight where there's like a chandelier and there's a bar setting, and they do take a few breaks from like the handheld style to have like some nice kind of like long shots. There's a great shot where like Dev Patel is doing battle up on the bar, and he's got like the bottles behind him and the lighting behind him, which makes him kind of like silhouette. It looks really nice. There's a few cool scenes where you get like overhead shots where you can, you're basically peering over like the chandelier to watch all the carnage unfold. It's pretty well shot, and I think like there's it proceeds along like a fairly standard revenge thriller in terms of the beats. Because like I think like what sets this film apart is that Patel showcases a lot of representation within India that goes beyond just like the setting, because like a lot of Indian films will just like use like the setting and like a few traits of their culture, but then mostly almost kind of keep it like innocuous so that it can work for an international crowd. And here It feels like Monkey Man is it's like the chains are off. Like he can be as critical of the society as he can. And that's like very blunt in a few scenes. There are some scenes where they cut around from like the carnage that's happening to like the poor people in the slums and the streets to show you like the huge divide of class that goes on within India. And it's absolutely blunt about what it's trying to say here about like the uneven nature of politics and how easily like embracing like this traditionalism and nationalism can disenfranchise people and drive people into revenge. This becomes like really overt once there's that down moment where like Monkey Man is semi-defeated, he makes his escape and he's got to like gain back his strength and have like that obligatory training montage at a temple. And it's at a temple of I always pronounce. I'm gonna try to pronounce this again. It's at a temple for a group of people known as the Ardhanarishvara. I swear I'm probably butchering that, but it's basically people who are more or less like between genders at that point, where it's like basically like men embracing like the feminine side, and they're not beholden to two genders. Like it's not quite. Like there's a little bit of like representation of like kind of like the trans movement, as well as like non-binary, but more or less it's people who are not gender conforming, who are discriminated against, who basically take in Monkey Man, and not only do they help him out, but Monkey Man helps them out as well by showing off like how to fight. And he like even during his training, he's like encouraging like, hey, why don't you come and fight alongside me and help me out on this quest for revenge. And since they're marginalized within this society, and like there's this election coming up and everything is tense with them right now, of course they're going to jump into it. And there's this great scene where all the members of the temple just dress up in like their finest garb and don like these vicious weapons and come to the aid of Monkey Man at just the right moment. And it's beautifully staged. Like it was so much fun to watch that sequence unfold. I especially like the cleverness of this film, in just like the staging of like the violence and the kills, but also just like the production design in general. Like like it's not just like Rana that Monkey Man wants to defeat in this battle, but there's also like the big boss at the top here who's manipulating everything, which is Baba Shakti, played by Makaran Deshpatande. And I love his performance because he's basically this guy who like preaches like all about like nonviolence and like basically kind of like the make India great again type of stuff. And he preaches like all this peaceful stuff, but then he's just one step ahead. Like he's always got like a secret weapon concealed. He's always hiding behind the violence until he can't anymore. At which point like he just like has weapons in his shoes. Like at the moment, like the finale of this film, I don't want to reveal too much, but it's beautifully staged where it's like the perfect setting for a final duel of like this person who seems like he's preaching peace, but the further that you get into this world, you realize that's BS, and it just comes down to a big fight. And just like all the the supporting performances here are great. In terms of like what they're meant to fulfill, like in terms of like you have Charlotte Copley playing Tiger, who's the underground wrestling manager, and he's just like eats up his scenes. Like he's just like he's so perfectly built to be a villain. Like some people might remember Charlotte from District 9, and here he's just kind of eating up the scenery as best he can. He's supposed to be like a showrunner for this wrestling ring, so obviously he's got to like play it up for the mic and everything. You have a gangster who turns an ally called Alfonso, played by Pito Bash, and he has this like eccentric nature where he's just like he's so into everything that you hope he turns to like the good side instead of favoring life of crime, and thankfully he does. Like he has such a wonderful sense of humor that he comes along with Monkey Man for the ride. Adding to that, you also have Vipin Sharma playing Alpha, the leader of the temple. who has like that perfect essence of like that wise nature, but also like that willingness to jump into action as well. So I really dug that performance as well. Yeah, there's a lot of ground that Monkey Man covers, but only to like it feels like it covers just enough. Like there's a backstory behind Monkey Man, like, you know, they slowly reveal, you know, his village being decimated and his mother being killed, and why he embraces like the monkey moniker for why he fights, and it just kind of just keeps proceeding. And it goes off that premise and builds it fairly well, and it's just like Patel's filmmaking is rather exceptional here. Like there's a few moments where it feels like a little uneven with like the shots they choose in fights. Like we go from like handheld gritty, like, you know, all over the place camera work to like fairly still, you know, restrained and like zoom back camera work. But like to the film's credit, like for dicing up that type of like shooting style, he does get some pretty good shots out of it. And I think it does work to the benefit of a lot of these fight scenes, in addition to make it not seem as derivative, I think. Because, like I said, they mentioned John Wick in this film. So if you mention John Wick, you got to have the brass cojones to make sure that your filmmaking is good enough to match, or to either match or surpass John Wick. And while I don't feel like it surpasses it, like I did have a lot more fun with how John Wick was staged. I felt like it went a little bit more over the top for that type of setting. I do admire what Patel is doing with Monkey Man and how well he makes this concept work and has it say so much when it didn't have to. Like, it could have just been a simple revenge thriller of just Patel working his way up through this tower of corrupt people, killing them off one by one. But it actually manages to say a little bit more about like class divide and vengeance and like the nature of, you know, like fighting for something more than yourself and highlighting India's politics. So saying just a little bit more where there's a bit more substance to go with like the grit and the bloodshed. And for that, I think, you know, for a first film directed by Dev Patel, he does a pretty damn good job. So that was Monkey Man, which is currently playing in theaters right now, and will probably be there for a little bit, I imagine. Like it did okay. I think its box office around like 10 million, which is not bad. I think that roughly covered like the distribution rights for that. So, which is good because like Monkey Man was almost just like dumped onto streaming services. So the fact that it's doing decent at the box office, I think is a good credit to like Dev Patel. I especially really like his direction. I'm hoping. I'm excited to see what he does next. Just because I think like I really admire his style, and there's a few scenes where I think they don't work as well as they could have, but there's some good grit there. There is something here. There's a great filmmaker here. But I need to see more from him at this point. So I'm excited. It's a very good first effort. Let's see. Scorn says, I enjoyed Last Night with the Devil. Late Night with the Devil, which I'm conflicted about seeing because, you know, it's controversial, but like the AI issue with, because like initially, like from what I heard, it was just like a few frames that they used for like the interstitials. But then I actually talked with a few people about the film, and they told me, no, it's not just for that. We've looked at like some of the backgrounds and stuff they've done like that, and it's clear they're using a lot more AI than just like the interstitials here. I'm conflicted about it because initially when I saw the trailer, like I loved the look of it and I loved the idea. That I don't know. I'm so tempted because I love what's his name, David Dishowitz. I always mispronounce, but the guy who played Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad. It's got him starring in it, and anything he's in, I would love to watch. So I'm conflicted. I mean, it's a Shudder production, so I'll eventually see it on Shudder. But yeah, I'm on the fence about not the film itself, just more the the ethical usage of AI. Like from what I've heard, like the film itself is actually good. Like it's actually really good for like the material that it's going for here. Which honestly I'm happy to hear about, because there's, you know, ever since like the VHS horror films, there's always been like this jump to do more like kind of like the retro found footage horror type films, and like that was like the initial thing that was just kind of like holding me back from pursuing the film in the first, because I thought, okay, so is this just going to be like, you know, like as derivative as like the VHS films, or is it going to be something more? And from what I've heard, it is a bit more than that. So it broke the, see, reading from Scorn here, it broke the environment since it went from the 70s found footage but went black and white camera shots, so it broke away from the found footage angle. Oh yeah, actually I do remember hearing someone mention that. So yeah, like that fills me with hope about the film itself. In terms of the usage of AI, I have some ethical concerns about that. I will probably watch the film at some point. I mean, it's, you know, it's one of those like Shudder films they shove in the theater first, and then it doesn't show up on the streaming service for like 2 or 3 months, which I don't know why, because I would think that, you know, if you have like such a small release, you would want that film to, you know, be on your streaming service so that people can go see it right away instead of just like waiting for it and like building up the intensity. But yeah, so yeah, I will see it eventually. To me, but there were good effects. Okay, it looked like it looked competent. Like it did feel like, yeah, something that was recorded off of television in like the late 70s. So yeah, it's got that going for it. So I'll eventually check it out. I'll eventually check on it. Okay, so now we got to get to our other films here. I'll slog through this one because I really want to talk about Hundreds of Beavers, but I'll save like the better film for last year. Oh my god, I just kicked over some of my promotional materials. Did I have? Oh, okay, I got that. Sorry, I still got like all this like this mess of like, because like I've destroyed like all the promotional materials that you usually get for FYC season, for FY for your consideration season, but I still have like all the like the big collector's books and like the scripts. Like I've got like the script for Barbie and the script for Maestro down here, along with like maybe how many others I got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about like 12 other scripts here. Which is it's fun to study that kind of stuff, you know, to learn, you know, how these films came about. So yeah, it's one of those things that I read in like my free time between like when I'm rendering stuff and when I'm organizing the shelf behind me. All my Criterions. Oh, by the way, but before I get into the review, I think I almost feel like I have to mention this, but for anyone who's been subscribed to the Criterion channel right now, there is a $20 coupon. I think it's $20 that they have there. Yeah, there's like a $20 coupon in your email if you're a subscriber. And I feel like I should mention that just because like today only, they're having a sale on the Eclipse collection of Criterion films. Which, if you don't know, like the Eclipse collection is maybe I think I have one here. Yeah. So yeah, the Eclipse collection are just like these cool little thin pack little collections of films. They don't really have any special features, but they bundle like a bunch of them together. So this is like a great collection. Like this is when horror came to Shakichu. I keep mispronouncing that, but this is basically a collection of like of retro Japanese horror films. So yeah, like they're a bit more expensive than the other Criterion sets. Like they're roughly like $50 to $60. So there's like 40% off sale on them. So if you want some bang for your buck, go check that out. To clarify, I am not sponsored by Criterion. I follow them and I like their stuff. So. And their stuff is spendy. So anytime you can get a deal on them, I always make sure to mention it. Okay. So without further ado, let us get into Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And here we go in... Ooh, cut that up there. In 3, 2, 1. So Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is it's an okay Ghostbusters film, which at this point, I think for Ghostbusters fans, that's kind of like a mild win, because like it felt like the past Ghostbusters films were either trying too hard to recapture the past or trying too hard to be divergent but also be nostalgic at the same time. Because there have been problems with the Ghostbusters films in the past. Like the previous film, Ghostbusters Afterlife, I had the biggest problems with because it had a lot of potential. I like the fact that they took this story about like the Spangler family and brought it out of the city and into a small town where they have to hunt down ghosts, which I thought had a lot of promise to it, and I like the characters that they set up. But unfortunately, when you get to like the second half of the film, it just goes back to nostalgia, because then they have to fight Gozer again. They bring up all these old lines, they bring back all the old Ghostbusters, and then they do the worst thing that they could possibly do in the film, is they CGI'd a ghost version of Harold Ramis to reprise his role as Egon in the film. So yeah, that left a nasty taste in my mouth, and I really didn't like Afterlife at all. I didn't like, not to the same degree, but I also didn't like the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot, mostly just because I don't feel like the jokes landed. I like the idea of trying to pass the torch onto a new brand of Ghostbusters, but it felt like it just wasn't hitting. Like it felt like it was being trying to be a little bit like, I don't quite want to say like too divergent, but it felt like it was going in a different direction and didn't quite embrace it as well as it should. And I think a big problem with that is that it was diced up, especially for the theatrical cut, because I have seen the director's cut of 2016's Ghostbusters, and it is mildly better. Like it's more cohesive than the theatrical version, which just felt like a mess. So yeah, the Ghostbusters, the past two films have been a mess, especially Afterlife. It was just like the grossest form of nostalgia. And Frozen Empire feels like almost like a compromise. It feels like it is going forward with the characters they established in Afterlife, which is good, because I actually did like the Spangler family, and I love how they kind of build them up as this family that has a history of being involved with the paranormal and has a little bit of a fascination with it. But then it also tries to satisfy what fans have come to know about Ghostbusters by bringing the story back to New York. They bring it back to the firehouse, and then they bring back all the old cast, which will probably appease like longtime fans who just want to see the old Ghostbusters crew again. And if you're worried that there's like a ghost Harold Ramis again, there isn't, which immediately makes the film a little bit better for me. But the biggest problem with this film is that like the new crew, like the Spangler family who takes over the Ghostbusters operations, and the old Ghostbusters crew, who are kind of like in the background now, but also kind of working like R&D and kind of like support the Ghostbusters here and there. There's this battle between them where it's like they're both fighting to occupy the screen. And it's a case where there's too many characters and there's too many arcs, and there's not enough time to get to know or love these characters, which sucks, because like I feel like, you know, like we've gotten a lot of like the other characters here. Like, you know, we've gotten enough, I think, of like of Winston and Ray and Peter. You know, we've got enough like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson. But we haven't got a lot of the Spangler family, and there's a lot of potential there, because the film sets it up where there is good conflict for them. Like, the whole idea is that the Spangler family, comprised of mostly comprised of Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace, who's the youngest member of the family. Finn Wolfhard playing Trevor, who's like the oldest sibling of the family. Callie Spangler, played by Carrie Coon, who's trying to be a single mother. And then you have the addition of Paul Rudd as Gary Guberson, who is basically, their new dad, but trying to like get used to the role of becoming a father. So there's lots to build on from there. And the film even has those elements that it could build on. Like, I love the fact that, like, Paul Rudd, who's, like, kind of like this goofy character who's trying to get more used to being a dad and assert himself. I think there's a handful of good moments with him. The way that Callie is struggling as a parent to assert her dominance while managing this Ghostbusters business, I thought was pretty cool. And especially, like, it felt like a lot of more attention should have been paid on Phoebe, because she is fascinated by ghosts, but feels like, because she's underage, she's not as well utilized as a Ghostbuster now that they have the operation up and running. So there's this fascinating arc where she befriends a ghost and starts learning a little bit more about the ghost world and tries to find a trust and kinship where there isn't one within the human world. And then, like, and here's, like, the biggest problem. Because there's so much else going on, the film doesn't find much to do with Trevor. Like, Trevor is mostly just reduced to this sub-arc of tracking down Slimer. And that's it. That's all there is. It's just Trevor hunting Slimer across the firehouse, and that's it. Like, there's nothing else going on there. And then, occupying more of the screen, you have, I will say this. If you didn't like the fact that Peter, Ray, and Winston in the previous Ghostbusters film just showed up to spout a few lines, like you wanted them to be a little bit more involved than just making like third act cameos, you will probably like this film, because all three of them take a much more active role in this film. Like, you have Winston as a playing more on the political side, keeping the Ghostbusters out of jail. You have Ray, of course, showing more of his paranormal expertise and offering, like, divulging a lot of the lore behind the ghosts that they're trapping. And then you have Peter mostly just doing the stuff that people love Bill Murray for in this role, which is, like, testing people, testing them for psychic abilities and messing with them during tests. So mostly just they're doing the same stuff that they've always done, which is fine in bits and pieces, but they take up so much of the screen time that the Spangler family has to share it with them. And the thing is, like, I haven't even got to the plot yet, just because there's too much going on. But the plot is, like, that there is also, like, another cool element here where you have the Ghostbusters trying to track this very old god that can apparently like take people's fear and turn it into basically ice. Like, he basically, like, freezes all of New York City, and he has ice powers. And he's got this fairly intimidating look to him, where it looks like a character that I would imagine from, like, the real Ghostbusters cartoon, which is a plus there. So it's playing a little bit more to the nostalgia, but it also feels a little bit more original because, it doesn't just feel like the derivative stuff of the past Ghostbusters film, where it doesn't have to rely on, like, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man or Gozer or a Gozer-like type villain. This does feel like an original villain all its own. But, much like the Spangler family, this villain is not given enough time to occupy the screen and become more interesting beyond just, like, the powers to, like, freeze all of New York City, which is cool on the surface, but you would hope that because there is lore to this character, and I was hoping that they would play up more on it and that the character would have a little bit more of a personality, but unfortunately there's not much time for that. In fact, there's not a lot of time in this film that I don't feel like there's enough time for any of the primary characters to be funny. And I say that only because I feel like the characters who get in the best laughs of the film are the comedic actors who are brought in as backup. So another character who plays a big role within the finale is Nadim, played by Kumail Nanjiani. Who's fairly good at, like, easing himself into comedy, so he has a few good laughs here. You also have Patton Oswalt playing a playing a professor at a library who divulges more of the lore, but he has a much more giddy sensation to it. Like this is the type of character who I almost wish, because Ray has like a teenage apprentice working for him, but I almost wish that Patton Oswalt's character was working for him, because he's so much more eccentric, he's so much more into this stuff, and he gets in a lot of funnier lines. And it dawned on me, even with the addition of all the other nostalgic characters, like you have Annie Potts back as Janine, which I will say this, if you want to see Janine as a Ghostbuster, you will get that in this film. So that's if that's on your Ghostbusters nostalgia bucket list, there it is. Also William Atherton as Walter Peck, who mostly just does the exact same role. He just comes in and blusters like, oh, I'm going to get those Ghostbusters. But the fact that the most hilarious characters in this film are Patton Oswalt and Kumail Nanjiani, it feels like it feels like the Ghostbusters can't be the comedic force that they were in the 1984 film, because there was a natural comedy that came with the Ghostbusters here, and now it feels like there's not enough time to explore these characters and for them to make jokes, that you got to rely on these simpler, smaller characters for the comedic backup. So the way I've described this in my reviews is imagine if in the original Ghostbusters, all four of the primary comedic actors never made any jokes, and they just relied on other comedic actors to come in and provide the comedy, because that's what it feels like. I know that wasn't the intent here. Obviously, I'm not trying to downgrade the film to that degree, but because they definitely were trying with Paul Rudd here, but so much of the comedy just kind of falls flat from them that it almost feels like it's necessary to have Kumail and Patton come in and provide some extra jokes, just so that it doesn't get lost in the nostalgia. And it's one of those, I'm conflicted, because it's one of those films that I don't want to praise it just for what it doesn't do, but after everything that happened in Whiplash, I was having whiplash from Ghostbusters Afterlife, but after everything that happened in Ghostbusters Afterlife, the nostalgia elements here are more restrained. I love the fact that there's a lot of Easter eggs here and there, but most of them are kept fairly far into the background where they don't interfere. At one point, when Ray is managing all his stuff, they mention mood slime in the background, that they had to move it around, and there's no close up of the mood slime from Ghostbusters 2. They don't talk about it. It's not a big deal. It's in the background, which is how I feel good nostalgic Easter eggs should be. But every now and then, there's a few times in the film where it has to slow down and stop and remind you something. At one point, the Ghostbusters visit a library, and they run into the same ghost in the library from one of the earliest scenes from the first Ghostbusters film. And it's just okay, it's a brief stop. It doesn't completely derail the movie, but it's it's a 30-second stop. Or just okay, yeah, I remember this moment. Do we have to stop here? Do I have to see Dan Aykroyd, scream at the same ghost again? It's so yeah, the nostalgia is much more restrained than it is in the previous films, if you don't count the usage of the original Ghostbusters here. So I'm very torn about this film, because I love the other stuff they add to this film. They explore a little bit more of the ghost tech. The lore behind the villain is fascinating. The dynamic between the Spangler family is pretty good. And there's it's all these elements that are really good. And they could be great. They could make a really good film if they had more time to breathe, if they weren't, there weren't so many characters crowding the screen, and just given more time to let these characters be, instead of being in a rush to capture the next ghost and stop the next villain. So I'm very conflicted. On a surface level, the film is fine. It's got enough horror elements where I feel kids will be able to come in and enjoy this film. And it's got just enough nostalgic elements that don't, overflow in the film, where I feel most adults who remember Ghostbusters will come in with their kids and be like, oh yeah, I remember that stuff. I'm kind of glad they had that little nod here and there. But all things considered, it seems like a it seems like this is as good as Ghostbusters is gonna get at this point. Because like it's trying to be in like this Goldilocks zone of being not too nostalgic, but not too divergent and original and new. And it kind of meets somewhere in the middle. And I guess for fans who want like a decent Ghostbusters film that respects them enough but takes enough chances, that might be fine. But it ultimately just comes up as kind of just generic for me, because like, you know, when we're not given enough time to explore these characters, and the new ones literally have to share as much screen time as the old ones, it just kind of comes off a little bit as a wash, almost kind of like as a generic blockbuster. So it's probably the best Ghostbusters film we're gonna get at this point, you know, considering everything that happened after Ghostbusters 2. But still, on that level, it still feels like it's not living up to its full potential. So yeah, it's an okay Ghostbusters film. Like, if you really just want those nostalgic pains and you want like a horror film you can watch with your kids, this is not a bad film. It's not a great Ghostbusters film. And I hope I made my point clear there. So yeah, Frozen Empire, I think it's playing in a few theaters right now. Don't know how well it'll hold up, but we'll see, you know. Let's read some comments here. So, Corinth says, so A24 recently acquired the distribution rights to Talking Heads concert film Stop Making Sense. I did see that, yeah. They even gave it a 4K remaster for its 40th anniversary release. Yes, they did. And yeah, just, oh my god, like, I've seen a few clips from it, and I really want to watch it again, just because I love David Byrne's performances. He did a film from, oh god, what was it? He did a live performance from 2020. Oh, why can't I remember it? It's called like American. Okay, I gotta look this up now. It's gonna drive me crazy here. So, but it was a really good performance. He did it with like a whole bunch of other musicians and singers, and they did it all in suits, and they were barefoot. Oh god, I remember I watched it like American Utopia. That's it. Yeah, that is such a good one. I gotta rewatch that again, because you know, it came out during the pandemic, and I just needed something to get me through the days. So I would just have it on in the background a few times, and my eyes just kept like going over to the television to watch it. Just because like I love Byrne's like staging and everything, and the music is great. So yeah. So, and yeah, I love it as much as I love Stop Making Sense. Stop Making Sense is beautiful. So yeah. I'm glad they were able to. I don't even want to quite say rescued. I'm glad they just gave it a good a good release, you know, and got it back in theaters, which doesn't take a lot. But you know, if you're gonna do a 4K remaster, then yeah, that takes a bit of effort. So kudos to A24. All right, so this might be a little bit of a shorter review, just because. It's not that in-depth of a film, but I'll do my best on this one, because I really want to talk about this one. Okay. Let me get a little bit of water here. Okay. Okay, so here we go with Hundreds of Beavers. In 3, 2, 1. So, Hundreds of Beavers is a slapstick, zany comedy film from director Mike Cheswick. I believe I'm saying that. Yeah, Mike Cheswick, that's right. And this is basically, Hundreds of Beavers is a... And I know like a lot of people have used this like term to refer to other films, but this really is, and I say this with like a genuine nature, and I want to try to stress this as much as I can. Hundreds of Beavers is a live action Looney Tunes bit made into a feature film. And what I love so much about this film is that it tries to embody like the spirit of a Looney Tunes bit, but on a much smaller budget. So it's the strangest type of film, and it's one of those things where it's like, where if you describe the premise, you're just like, okay, this just sounds like a Looney Tunes bit that would only last like 6 minutes. Like, how could this film possibly go on for 108 minutes? But believe me, it makes it work. It does the impossible. It takes what could have been a 6-minute Looney Tunes short film and makes it work within the premise, within its premise for like 108 minutes. So the whole premise is that you have you have the central protagonist here, Jean Kayak, played by Ryland Brixton Cole Hughes, who has basically, like, he lived the life of like being drunk, and then at one point in his life he just finds himself alone in the wilderness without money or food or shelter. So he's got to find a way to survive, so he's got to try to trap wildlife. So this leads to a lot of funny hunting gags. And when I say he has to hunt animals, all the animals in this film are either played by puppets, and that's mostly the fish. But for the most part, all the animals are played by these costumed characters who look less like animals and more like they're animal mascots for a college football team who are coming onto the field. But that just kind of adds to the charm of this film. Because like it's meant to take place in like this snowy setting, which is obviously like green screen from like the way that it's shot and everything, but it's shot in like black and white, and it has this kind of like almost it pretty much embraces like this aesthetic, but like this silent movie slapstick aesthetic where there's barely any dialogue, and most of the dialogue is just like, people going like that type of film. And it makes it work for how it just keeps, finding fun stuff for this character of Jean to do as he struggles to survive in the wilderness. So the film starts off with a lot of bits where he's trying to trap rabbits and beavers, and it's just like trying and failing, and sometimes he wins and sometimes he doesn't. And at least all these funny bits where like icicles will come down from the trees, and they're almost like homing icicles, and he'll just randomly fall into parts of the snow, and animals will just trip over themselves, and they'll have these bizarre nonsense conversations, and it just proceeds along with just these fantastic bits of slapstick. Now there is a bigger premise here. So once like John starts trapping more beavers and getting their pelts, he brings them to a fur trapper, or like not even like a fur trapper, like a fur trader, and he becomes smitten with the merchant's wife. And the wife is clearly into him, and he, kind of fancies her. But the only way to attain her hand in marriage is if he can bring the merchant hundreds upon hundreds of beaver pelts. Because, like, they establish, like, the dynamic fairly well here, where, like, if he brings back some beaver pelts, like, if you bring back, like, 2, you'll get, like, like a knife or something. If you bring back 3, you'll get, like, you'll get some, you'll get, like, a gun, you'll get some extra traps and stuff like that. So it's kind of him working his way up, almost kind of like a video game. And then when he gets to the point where he realizes, I gotta trap hundreds of beavers, well, I'm going to have to go into the biggest beaver den that I can find and kill as many beavers as I can. And so he finds that the beavers are building this big dam, and he goes inside there, and of course, this whole film operates by cartoon logic. So when he goes into the dam, like, it's not just any dam. Like, it's this huge stronghold where they have a science laboratory, and they're building rockets, and they have, like, all this machinery for cutting up wood and stuff like that. And it's just John going on this massacre of all these beavers in the most ridiculous way possible. Like, he decapitates them, he traps them in like these slingshots that like pierce them through the chest, and it's kept like the best way to describe the film is that like it's it does have a little bit of gore, but it's like cartoonish gore, where it's like, if you're going to show blood and guts, like the way that they look in the film, like they're almost kind of like felt guts, like they're like they were stitched together, almost kind of like make it almost kind of look like cute. So it's trying to be like Looney Tunes, but like a much darker and absurdist version of Looney Tunes, where like there can be more violence and like decapitation and like animals getting chopped in half, but in a, like kind of like a silly kind of independent film type way, where they're just making the best with what they have here. And it's surprising just how many bangers they get out of these gags of all of this slapstick zaniness. And you would think, like, okay, it's just this guy going around killing beavers. Like, that seems like it'd be fun for like the first half hour, maybe an hour, but not quite. But it feels like 100 minutes. You're kind of pushing it there. Trust me, it does not. It only continues to play up the absurdity. Like, and I think one of the ways that this film prevents itself from being stale is that it switches it up now and then. Like, it makes some bold choices, like not to reveal the title of the film until it gets to that moment where the merchant says, "I need hundreds of beavers," and then the title comes up, and then the credits for the characters come up. I love how there's also like a running bit where they switch up the credits halfway through, and like there's a deceiver. Like there's one character who's just a beaver in disguise the whole time, and they switch up the credits for it. I love how they dip into like a silent film where like when like characters will talk a nonsense, but sometimes they will get title cards. And then just the absurdity, like the over the top nature with the beavers, how they have a rocket ship, how their dam looks like this giant castle, how the beavers like formed together like Voltron at one point to make like a giant beaver mecha. It finds all the fun stuff that you could do with this premise, and it makes it work. Like there's animated sequences, like there's obvious green screen sequences, there's a musical sequence in the beginning, like there's dark comedy with like killing and getting drunk, and like there's like weird flirtation going on between Jean and like the merchant's daughter, and just everything about this was just so much fun, and it's shocking how many great laughs this film can get out of such a small budget. Like the budget for this film, from what I've come to learn, it's $150,000. That was it. And it's like, this is a great testament to like a film with great ideas will come about. And it feels like you don't need the biggest budget to make a fun idea work. Because it feels like, you know, if this went to a big studio, like they would embrace like trying to make the beavers look more realistic or trying to put more effort into the kills. And here, with embracing like the black and white staging and the green screen and all the beavers with like the giant like, you know, heads that look like they're going to come onto a football field, all of it just has this adorable charm to it where, you know, like you admire just the staging alone, but then the fact that they get so many great slapstick bits out of it is just such a testament to how great this film was. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this film for mostly being just like a series of zany Looney Tunes gags. And it's going to be one of those types of films like Mad Max Fury Road, where people complain that, well, it's just one thing, like it's just like, you know, it's just one chase, or it's just a series of gags, or, you know, it's just this one type of film that it's trying to be here. Which on its surface, yes, it's true. The whole premise is just one guy trying to murder hundreds of beavers. It's true to the title. But there's a lot more going on in terms of like the staging and the gags and all the effort that goes in to making all these, you know, basically silent bits of comedy work so well that I just adored the film. So yeah, Hundreds of Beavers, just it was just such a delightful surprise. Like I found myself laughing at this film way more than I expected to for this this charming little film about killing beavers. So Hundreds of Beavers, I think, is playing in a few theaters right now. It had like one of those like kind of Paranormal Activity word of mouth type of theatrical deliveries. You might have actually, because I actually saw this at the Showplace Icon Theater. They did have a poster for it up. So it's mostly one of those things where it's like, you know, if you want to see this film in your theater, tell your theater and they'll get it for you. But be quick about it, because it's gonna go to digital platforms starting next week. So, if you have a theater playing it, I would say go see it with a crowd. Because I watched a digital copy at home, and I kind of regret it. I kind of wanted to go out to the theater and see this, because it must have been a hoot to watch this film with a crowd, So yeah, I highly recommend Hundreds of Beavers. Let's see, we got a few more comments here. What movies are you looking forward to this year? My biggest one is Nosferatu, because of Robert Eggers. Eggers rocks, so obviously. But do Dragnet and Norbit show up? Is there a new Norbit film coming up? Oh, sorry. I misread that. But do Daggett and Norbit show up for Okay, I got it now. For some reason, I misread that as Dragnet. I think because I don't know why. I was thinking about Dragnet a few days ago. So, but yeah, I have no clue what happened with that. In terms of the other films I'm looking forward to, I just saw the trailers today for Maxine. The sequel to what was it, 2022's X, and the further sequel to Pearl. So it will complete the X trilogy. So yeah, I'm great looking forward to Maxine a lot. And there's a few others coming up in May. Furiosa, obviously. Looking forward to more George Miller on the big screen. I can't wait. What else? There is quite a few things. There's a few films looking forward to, but it's all like, it's not like, immediate like sequel stuff. So I'm trying to recall what else was coming out. I know there was there was one coming out in November, and I'm not sure if like it's gonna stick with that date, but there was one coming out in November that I was greatly looking forward to, and I'm trying to recall what it was. I always blank on which. I spend my time engrossed in so many films that I always kind of like blank on what films are coming out in the rest of the year. It's usually like whatever gets like a decent trailer and stuff like that I find myself gravitating towards. But yeah, right now the number one film I'm looking forward to is Maxine, which looks great. It's a 1980s film where apparently a porn star tries to get into horror movies, which continues on from the plot of X, and it looks fantastic. Let's see, I got Terrifier 3, The Crow, Joker, and Sonic 3. For the fall releases. Well, it's definitely not any of those. It might surprise me. Like I wasn't big on Terrifier 2. I thought it kind of like lost steam the more it went along. I am curious. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see if Terrifier 3 wins me over. The Crow, I have very low expectations for. Commendable for not trying to replicate the same style as The Crow, but the style they went with just looks generic. The Joker sequel just seems odd. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, I almost feel like I have to see it to believe it, because I know they're trying to make it it's weird. Like, they say it's a musical, but it's not quite a musical. Like it's a jukebox musical. So I don't know. You got Lady Gaga's. I was not big on the last Joker film, so it seems like I'm caught between like it being an uphill battle, and like at this point I don't know if there's anything you could do to make me think of it less. And Sonic is just So I know people love those Sonic movies, but they're just kind of bland for me. They're just like they're okay. They're fine for kids. They're good for like a family audience, but everything from like the product placement to the standard pop culture jokes, they just don't work for me. They don't. Like, I have nothing against the film. If you love Sonic, fine, but it just comes off like a generic blockbuster to me. Let's see, one more comment here. Yeah, Terrifier 2 went on a bit in odd areas, but it sounds like they're toning back the supernatural things. It's not even just like the supernatural, because like the supernatural is just like bonkers nonsense in Terrifier 2. Like, it doesn't build to anything. It doesn't really hold any greater meaning, even when they reveal the big twist at the end of the film. Honestly, the problem for me is just like the kills got monotonous, and I think that's just because they shoot their wad early. Like I think like the most brutal kill in Terrifier 2 is like midway through when I forget who it was, but like he corners someone in their house, and like he rips off their skin and then comes back with like, was it like salt and lemon juice, and puts it all over them and just keeps tearing more of the skin off. That was gruesome, violent, and it's like the goriest thing in the film. But it's halfway through, and it's like, because I'm like, how are you going to top this? Where do you go from here? And they don't really, because even after that, like there's other kills where the clown just kills people with a shotgun blast. It's like, how do you go from like ripping off someone's skin and putting lemon juice in there and like making it like a big game out of it and torturing them, to just blowing someone's brains out with a shotgun? Like that, it feels so lacking. It's like, why did you shoot your load so early? You know, if you want to showcase cool kills, yeah, okay, cool. But I still feel like even on that degree, you need some progression to it. You need to build up to it so that you don't just waste all your cool kills halfway through, and then the rest of the film, it just comes off kind of lazy by comparison. Like, it really is. Like, once you go from like that torture scene, like, I don't think the film could do anything more grotesque. And it doesn't. So, like, for the next hour, it's just like, okay. Okay, blows people's brains out, you know, you cut someone's throat. Yeah, sure, all right. Fine, you know. Because like, that's the one thing that just made me not like the film. Because I know a lot of people say, like, oh, well, you didn't like Terrifier 2 because you don't like horror, you know, you don't like gore and, you know, the torture stuff. Like, I'm fine with the torture stuff as long as it has a progression. You know, like any script, it's got to have a build and a structure and like a rhythm to it to get used to it. So like, even films that just want to be kills still have to have a progression to it. Like, even the most like almost pornographic torture porn film out there, you know, it was Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom. Even that film has a rhythm to it. Like, it still progresses past like all the grotesqueness of it, which I was tempted to describe what goes on in the film, but I realized that it would probably disturb a lot of people. So, and would probably get the stream in trouble. So just go watch Salo, and you'll know why. You'll know why everyone keeps making jokes about it. You'll know why it's a joke film at this point. Well, it's not even a joke film. Like, it is making like deep, crucial commentary on fascism. But there's a reason why everyone makes the jokes for it are like defensive. It's that vile that you have to joke about it. It's like Two Girls, One Cup. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's gross, but like, you know, you joke about it, and you joke with other people about it, and you kind of have to joke about it in order to endure it, more or less. Which, unlike Two Girls, One Cup, you should endure the 120 Days of Sodom. It is a good film. For all like the boasting and the memes and jokes everyone makes about it, it is a good film. It's a very good film. Just not one to watch with grandma, if that makes any sense. Okay. Last film here, and this will be more of a mini review, just because I can sense myself losing my voice. Which this happened at Anime Detour as well. I lost my voice there, doing 4 panels in a row. So, yeah, won't make that mistake again. All right, so let's talk about Kung Fu Panda 4 briefly in 3, 2, 1. So Kung Fu Panda 4 is obviously the 4th Kung Fu Panda film, but it's a Kung Fu Panda film without many of the same people, both in terms of the people behind the scenes and most of the cast. In particular, the familiar directors don't return for this film to head it up again, unlike the previous 3 Kung Fu Panda films, which all had like, you know, the same amount of staff and the same progression. Kung Fu Panda 4 also doesn't have the Furious Five. They're written out to be on other missions, and we're only left with a handful of the original characters. And on that level, just on that level alone, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are not going to like Kung Fu Panda 4. And there definitely isn't the same magic that there was there before. But I have to admit, and this is like, it's one of those things where, I know that a lot of people despise this film, but I have to admit this film actually does have just a little bit of charm left in it. Not a lot. Like, it's, compared to the past 3 Kung Fu Panda films, this is definitely the weakest. It has the least amount of charm. It has the least amount of depth. It even has more mixed messaging going on within it, like its general themes about, individuality and passing the torch. That being said, for going back into this world, they do find just enough here where it's like, okay, you know what? This was kind of worth one more trip to the world of anthropomorphic animals in this version of China. And it kind of works. And it's mostly because, like, I like the premise of the film of, like, building up Po, once again voiced by Jack Black, to, have become so used to being the Dragon Warrior that he has to realize that, you're getting up there in age. You got to pass the mantle down to someone else. And it's one of those things where, Po has grown so much used to it that he doesn't want to let go of it. But of course, he's got to find someone, and that someone might be Zen, voiced by Awkwafina, and she is a fox who is a thief. And Po catches her stealing some relics and tries to throw her in prison, but says, "Hey, come with me on an adventure. I'll reduce your sentence, and hey, who knows? Maybe you'll inherit a temple. How about that?" So of course, they go along with it, and they have mismatched ideas on what it means, to be there, to form trust and to have an idea of justice. So they play off each other fairly well. Most of the time they have good chemistry when the film allows them to have it. The villain of this film is not as intimidating as the previous ones. The villain is the chameleon, voiced by Viola Davis, who is a woman who can transform into any type of martial arts fighter, but she doesn't have the same skills. So instead, she wants to steal the Kung Fu Panda's, the Dragon Warrior's relics, so that she can tap into the spirit realm and steal the powers of all the previous martial artists that have come before, namely all the villains from the past Kung Fu Panda films. Which, only one of them, I think, does the voice here. You have Ian McShane comes back as Tai Lung for a few lines. Don't get too excited. If you're hoping for more Ian McShane here, he doesn't have a lot to do in this film. It's more or less like a cameo for how they use him. Now, it's the thing that I think works that makes the sequel hold up is just the world itself. I love that that in order to track down the chameleon, there's this adventure where Po and Zen have to, at first they have to trek to a port town in which they have a bar fight at this tavern that's, teetering over the side of a cliff. So they have physics on their side, and there's some decent slapstick in that bit. I love the fact, though, that when they get to the Chameleon City, it's a city run by, very thuggish police officers, and there's a criminal underground world that's run by this pangolin voiced by Ki Hui Kwan, which it's just Ki Hui Kwan, which is, it's fine, He has a little bit of, like, dry charm to him. But what I was kind of hoping for more was with the development of Po's two fathers, because if you might remember from the previous Kung Fu Panda film, Po discovered his dad, another panda called Lee, played by Bryan Cranston, and then of course you thought, okay, well, how will this connect with Po's adoptive father of the goose, Mr. Ping, played by James Hong. And to the film's credit, it does find fun stuff to do with how, Mr. Ping and Lee connect with each other. Unfortunately, it doesn't involve Po as much, which is kind of a disappointment, because I was actually kind of looking forward to seeing, how Po would get used to having, his two dads, and, seeing how they get along. And, how they dole out their fatherly advice. I thought there'd be like a great like kind of like threesome dynamic there. But unfortunately, it's mostly about like Poe and Zen, and I feel like we kind of got robbed of a greater story there. But I will say, though, it was cute to see Lee and Ping having like their own interaction, because they're more or less trying to catch up with Poe on his adventure and kind of aid him, and they have a few cute moments where they get to talk about being dads and how they worry about their children, and how they perceive themselves as being old guys who connect with each other. And I wanted more of that. I wanted a lot more of those scenes, and I feel like we could have gotten that if you combined Lee and Ping with Poe in the whole film, and you could have had that dynamic throughout, which I thought could have worked well. I felt like all the themes could have meshed together better, instead of just like separating apart and then more or less trying to jam them together in the action-packed finale. Especially when you consider the finale has some questionable depictions of how the villains of the spirit realm are kind of okay with Poe trying to save the day here. It feels like they would try to, sabotage and try to lean more into the motives of the chameleon. And unfortunately, that it doesn't feel like there's that much of a build. So, like, I'm giving the film credit just for the world they establish here. I like the tone and rhythm. I especially like the little additions here and there. Like, there's some, there's like this trio of like little bunny kids who are fancying themselves as criminals. I love the reasoning of like the criminal underworld, where Poe tries to get them to do the right things, but they do them only for like the wrong reasons, which is kind of a decent running gag throughout. And of course, most of the action scenes are good. They're definitely not great. They're definitely not as stylish and as detailed in terms of like their choreography as the past Kung Fu Panda films, but they still have just enough, just barely inching over the finish line here. It's like, okay, you know what? I had a decent time. Like, you know what? If you're gonna go back to the world of Kung Fu Panda, I felt like there were just enough moments here that made me care about it, that made me, like to see these characters again, and make me see this, get lost in this world again. It was worth it for that. But I will say, if you've become accustomed to the Kung Fu Panda films adhering to that style, this is definitely the most divergent in terms of, not just in terms of like the animation, which does seem to take a few different liberties. Like, it's definitely not like, I don't want to say it's a downgrade. It still looks stunning here and there. But like the choreography is not as good as it could have been. The themes are not as great as they once were, and the whole meshing of themes just isn't there for a lot of the scenes. But you know what? For like a few smiles here and there, just admiring this world, it's a decent film. So yeah, Kung Fu Panda 4 is decent. I don't know how much I'm gonna feel, how good I'm gonna feel if there is a Kung Fu Panda 5. Because I don't know how many. I think this is it. I don't think it has any more juice left in its punches, or anything left to explore within the lore of Kung Fu Panda at this point. That I don't think there's more you can do with it. So I think this is probably a decent way to end, and I hope it ends here, because there's nothing left in Kung Fu Panda. Like, this just narrowly made me smile here and there. So Kung Fu Panda might be in a few theaters. Might be. Where you can find it. It'll probably be going to digital real quick here, because it came out a few weeks ago. Let's see, one more comment here. At least you don't have to talk more FNAF. Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah. Not yet. There'll probably be like a sequel coming next year. But yeah, actually at Anime Detour, I did briefly talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, and it was like the last film that was brought up by the audience right before the panel was gonna end. So like, I realized that there was a FNAF panel right after mine in the same room. So I almost kind of joked about like, oh god, oh, I've probably pissed off the people who are gonna be waiting for that. Yeah, it's fine though. It's just a film. I didn't like the film. It's not good, but you know, kids get something out of it. Fine. Kids need more horror films, you know. Oh, that's right. You were. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot you were there. You did mention. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, for anyone who wasn't at Anime Detour, we had a year in film panel, and I made a bit of a joke after a little bit of blustering on Five Nights at Freddy's, just a little bit. Like I don't want to make it a thing where I keep talking about it. It's just wasn't a very good film, and I don't like talking that much about films I hate. Just because if you do that, if you spend that much time talking about films you hate, that's all you do. All you do is end up talking about films you hate, and that's all people come to you for. And I don't want that. I don't want to be known as the guy who just keeps bitching about FNAF for this whole time. Which thankfully I don't think I have to. I think more people will watch for other stuff than that. And even if they don't, that's not the type of person I want to be. I don't want to be the FNAF guy. So, all right. Let's do a recap of the films that we reviewed on today's show. Let me get the music up here. So, what did we talk about? We talked about Monkey Man, Dev Patel's directorial action debut, which he also stars in. And it's a very, very strong first effort. I had a lot of fun with Monkey Man. I did not have as much fun at Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, a sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which just can't let go of the original Ghostbusters nostalgia, and it actually hurts the film a lot, and what could have been a good film ends up just kind of being a bland retread of Ghostbusters. I also reviewed Hundreds of Beavers, which is just a series of budgeted slapstick gags that really, really worked. It did really feel like a live-action Looney Tunes film, so if that's what you're craving, if you're seeking that type of comedy, that type of zany comedy, go check out Hundreds of Beavers. And finally, Kung Fu Panda 4, a not as good as the previous three Kung Fu Panda films, but it does have an okay amount of charm to it, where I did find myself chuckling here and there at it. And I do admire the world of Kung Fu Panda. So if you're a hardcore Kung Fu Panda film nut, you probably are not going to like this film. And then this is the least impressive film. So yeah, it's fine is the best way to say it. So there you go. Not too bad of a stream, you know. 2 fine films and 2 really good films, which all involve killing. So, ironically enough, the other fine films are just family films. So there you go. Endure all that with the family, and then go. Actually, I guess Hundreds of Beavers. It's a little dark, but you could watch it with the kids if they're used to Looney Tunes stuff, I guess. If they don't mind felt guts, I guess. That's the best way to say it. All right, so if you want to check out my reviews on all these films, you can go to movieswithmark.com. And I also write over on filminquiry.com and twincitiesgeek.com. So let's see, what do we got coming up in the few weeks here? I think we do have the I think for sure I've got a screener of Abigail coming up, and I do believe we have the the Disorderly Gentleman, that absurd film coming up. Looking forward to that. So yeah, lots of stuff coming in April. We're just about to hit the summer season where we get all the big films. So if you want to stay informed on all the big summer films, as well as all the Oscar contenders, which we'll review later in the year, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you like early movie reviews, which I do here and there. And technically, I guess if you haven't seen Hundreds of Beavers in digital yet, that is an early review. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel to stay informed on all the movies coming up. So I will catch you all next time. So yeah, until we do another one of these streams, have a good one.